Humanist UK has an exploitation problem, something I've had personal experience with, though I always assumed my experience was the anomaly. However, others out there have come forward recently sharing their own perspectives, making me want to speak out, if for nothing more than to reassure them that they're not imagining things like I thought I was. But before we can discuss that any further, I just need to give a content warning for the following: alcohol consumption, alcoholism, misogyny, racism, and transphobia. If you like our work and appreciate the research put into each video, please consider supporting the channel via Patreon. You can also support us by liking, commenting, and sharing our work on social media like Twitter and Discord. So there I was on the 20th of June, minding my own business, when I received a message from an old friend I hadn't talked to in a while. It was none other than former YouTuber Captain McCool. For those who weren't around during my university years, McCool and I both set out to establish an Atheist, Humanist and Secularist Society, or AHS, at the University of Surrey. And when I say both of us, I mean both of us, as in we didn't know the other existed, in spite of having a mutual friend we both talked non-stop to about the project, since she just assumed we were in cahoots. We were not. Anyway, the message itself read, quote, "I remember you got an odd vibe off Andrew Copson. Have you seen what Aliyah Saleem has posted?" End quote. To which I responded, I had not, prompting McCool to send me a link to the article she had written. What I found led me down a rather deep rabbit hole. Aliyah's article discussed the way in which Humanists UK, formerly the British Humanist Association, absorbs and then staffs smaller secular groups. The list of victims included Faithless, a group that Aliyah helped co-found in 2015 before it went on to quickly merge with Humanist UK the following year. The article goes through Humanist UK's accounts, noting how, in spite of being a multi-million-pound organisation, bringing in £2.6 million in 2019 alone, only a minuscule portion of that money was spent on the various groups it had been entrusted with over the years. In 2019, Faithless only received £21,373, or 0.8% of that year's earnings. The Gay and Lesbian Humanist Association received just £10,560, roughly 0.4%, whilst Defence Humanists received a mere pittance of £678, 0.02%. That same year, UK Humanists increased the budget for promoting the organisation from £600,000 to £710,431. Aliyah also points out that a fourth organisation UK Humanists had taken over, the UK Centre for Inquiry, was closed in 2018. This worrying trend of focusing more on promoting the organisation rather than supporting humanist efforts throughout the UK to build a presence through ground level work is something that deeply concerns Aliyah, who went on to state that, quote, "I believe that the emergence of this pattern can be traced back to the appointment of Andrew Copson as the CEO of Humanist UK 11 years ago. And having dealt with Andrew Copson through AHS, I would have to agree, and I'll explain why. But before I do that, I first need to give you an understanding of how our AHS operated. Whilst a big part of what we did as an AHS society was running talks and holding discussion groups, an equally major part of our role on campus was community outreach. We had excellent relations with various societies such as FemSoc, LGBT+ Soc, MindSoc, and a bunch of other progressive groups. Together we were known as the leftist bloc during the university meetings, keeping one another in the loop and making sure we always voted in the interest of all students, particularly the marginalised. I remember when FemSoc was trying to get ratified. They gave their speech and answered people's questions, only to exit the room whilst we all voted, as was union policy. Now, all discussion is meant to be had when the proposed society is in the room and can answer any questions, yet some misogynist jackass started yelling shit about how a feminist society would be true sexism if it were allowed to pass, after FemSoc had stepped outside. So those of us in the leftist bloc quickly responded, refuting his argument and calling for the union to take action. We also made sure that all ethnic and national societies passed ratification because said societies offer foreign students an important way to remain connected to their home country, with said groups usually celebrating national and/or cultural holidays, which really helped those missing home. They also gave newer foreign students a place to go to in order to get advice if needed, even for things that seem as relatively simple as, where can I buy this ingredient? I can't find it anywhere. Again, there were parts of our university, namely Conservative Society, who weren't too fond of the idea, but we just saw that as a bonus. One of our main community outreaches, however, was towards the university's LGBT+ community. The Christian Union ran a free tea and coffee stand at every major club night except the monthly LGBT+ night called Teas. This didn't feel right to us for obvious reasons, so myself and McCall went down to a service store and purchased some large water thermoses, as well as industrial-sized boxes of tea bags, ground coffee, and hot chocolate powder. Each month, a group of us stood outside, no matter the weather, offering free hot drinks from when the club opened until after it closed. Sometimes we'd only make it back home around 3 in the morning after cleaning up. We quickly became aware of just how important our services were. Not only does it allow students consuming large quantities of alcohol a way to remain hydrated, it put us in a position to be able to help people. I'm ashamed to say that the bouncers hired by our student union treated drunk students appallingly. They dumped people just outside the club, regardless of weather conditions or how coherent they were, effectively leaving them to the mercy of the elements. After all, once they're outside, it's not legally their problem. As a result, we ended up intervening quite a lot, sitting people up, helping find lost jackets, and giving them something to eat and drink. It got to the point that I would always ensure I had an extra packet of biscuits inside my rucksack, just so we could give people something to help them start sobering up by absorbing some of the alcohol in their stomachs. It's important to keep in mind that members of marginalised communities, especially LGBT+ folk, who not only face societal discrimination but family rejection, are far more likely to suffer substance abuse problems such as alcoholism. So we weren't simply helping in spite of them being LGBT+, we were helping some of the people most likely to engage in high-risk behaviours due to discrimination. Over time, we sort of became known as the society that could be reached out to if any other society needed extra volunteers. Are the music societies running a charity night and the student union refuses to cover it? I hear the people at AHS have access to camcorders. Is FemSoc running a cake fundraiser? Why don't we see if we can get AHS to come along and offer free drinks to increase our sales? Fun fact, we actually got in trouble for that last one. Turns out Starbucks had been talking with the student union about doing a free promotion during the slot where FemSoc would be selling their goods, a fact FemSoc was not informed of. Of course, people were more interested in our free services, leading Starbucks to complain to the student union, who subsequently barred us from serving free drinks outside of club nights. Because that's capitalism, folks. Our student union was pretty shitty, I'm not gonna lie. Point is, we were all doing a lot of good, with next to zero support from Humanist UK. The £20-ish they gave us didn't even cover the cost of running a single event. And do you remember all that stuff purchased to run tea at teas? I paid for all of that out of pocket with my own Patreon earnings because helping others is something I believe in and used to believe was central to being a humanist. At the time, I thought humanism was going to be this big paradigm shift. We had Stephen Fry, the Python crew, and Terry Pratchett had supported the BHA whilst he was still alive. I was certain that all this groundwork we were doing was helping build something by showing people that you don't need to adhere to a religion in order to be compassionate. You can therefore imagine my reaction when, in 2016, Andrew Copson, the CEO of Humanist UK, planned to visit Surrey to give us a lecture on the importance of humanism and the work we were doing. I was excited. That was a mistake, one that would leave me completely unprepared for what was about to happen. So I turn up at AHS on the evening of the 25th of February, ready to listen to two talks. The first by Andrew on the state of humanism in the UK, and the second by McCall on ethics. Andrew's talk started out okay. He began by going over some basics of humanism, really simple stuff you can find out online, but that's fine. However, his tone completely changed about halfway through his talk. Andrew began ranting about how not enough people, ourselves included, were paying members of Humanist UK. He talked about how we were letting the team down as a result, and I remember him being visibly agitated about this. I don't think I'd quite say he was yelling, but he was not happy. It was a major punch in the gut considering all the work we've been putting into the group. And just so we're clear, this isn't me retroactively looking back and seeing things in a negative light. I was part of the committee. I'd helped found our AHS. I stood outside past midnight in the freezing cold and pissing rain for the past 2 years, and yet this is how demotivated I was, as seen in a conversation I had with Adita the next day. As I said at the time, quote, "Not sure if I should go to AHS tonight. Last night was a big letdown."
Big letdown? What happened?
The talker from the British Humanist Association was just a bit of a dick. I was really looking forward to it. Didn't really enjoy it.
Stockton? What did he say? No, Copson, sorry. Andrew Copson.
Just the presentation was shit, and the attitude to humanists who were not paying members of the BHA. Mike did far better in discussing ethics.
That's a bit silly. Not everyone can be a paying member, and some of us are international students. I was, for whom it doesn't do good.
This meeting is even later, meaning I'd have to wait 2.5 hours when my train arrives for what may possibly be the same. End quote. For a little context on what I meant by having to wait around for 2.5 hours, 2016 was my work placement year. I was doing full-time unpaid placement at Support U, an LGBT plus support charity that covered the Thames Valley area. Now, I was working in Reading, though I travelled through Guildford on the way home, meaning I could get out there, but I'd have to sit around for a couple of hours before the meeting started. Another interesting thing to note is the fact that I'd actually approached Humanist UK about doing my work placement with them before later approaching Support U. In hindsight, I'd have to say I dodged a bullet there. Point is, I remember being incredibly busy at the time. I was working on a video project that had taken the better part of a month, I was travelling 2 hours each day, and I had been looking forward to the meeting the night before. Only to be told that my efforts were meaningless because I wasn't a paying member of Humanist UK in order to... I don't know what. They sure as hell didn't help out with society. Yeah, they gave us £20 to get started with, but I seem to recall the annual subscription for a student being £24. So on one subscription alone, they'd be taking money out of the society, not giving it. If all 3 essential signatories had a subscription, they'd be making £52. Add the 20 plus people required to get a society ratified, and that's a profit of £532 annually. Take that and project it to every major university campus in the UK, and you get the picture. This business model, because that's exactly what it is, reminds me of how Facebook operates. Facebook is infamous for refusing to share posts with people who follow your page, only to turn around and demand money from you, the artist, to do so. This is in spite of the fact that your content is a major part of what draws people to the site and allows them to advertise to people and mine their accounts for data. It's completely fucked up and backwards and should not be a comparison I'm able to draw to a supposed charity. We were all volunteering because we genuinely had high hopes for humanism. Many of us had grown up being told that religion not only has a place in politics, but has a monopoly on ethics and meaning. We'd seen countless cruelties justified on grounds of religious conviction, and we wanted something new, something different. We thought that was humanism, and whilst I still personally subscribe to the philosophy, I don't see Humanist UK as being part of that. It may bear the name Humanist, but that's all it is, a name. Just to be clear here, since I can guarantee someone is going to bring this up, Yes, I know Humanists UK have made student memberships free since 2018. That's besides the point I'm trying to make. This video is not about any one specific problem, but rather an underlying issue, namely Mr. Copson and his impact on Humanists UK. The fact that student memberships weren't free prior to 2018 wasn't what made Copson get visibly angry. That was his own personal outlook on student volunteers and how Humanists UK was owed money on top of their labour. Note the fact that I wasn't upset about the lack of free memberships at the time. I didn't expect to vote or anything else. I only got annoyed when an official from Humanists UK, the CEO no less, told us that we, human beings, were only as important as the value of our wallets. It's very reminiscent of Reverend Lovejoy bitching about the size of his collection plate, is all I'm saying. And it's gotten to the point that, when I first heard about the free membership, the cynic in me immediately questioned the motive behind the act. Were they making it free because that was the right thing to do, or did they do it since not enough students were paying anyway, and getting them hooked on it as a support structure during university means they're more likely to fork out money in future? So yeah, with that made clear, back to the show. Now, at the time I didn't write off the group completely. After all, it was one talk, which, as deflating as it was given by a single man. So I buried it, returning to AHS and continuing to promote humanism here on the channel. I even volunteered at their 2016 conference in Birmingham, during which I met Andrew for a second time and questioned my initial doubts. That was until a series of further incidents, particularly their ridiculous standards on free speech absolutism, where they'd go to war over a rule about not smoking whilst inside a union's mascot costume made of synthetic fur, while simultaneously refusing to act on the growing transphobia problem in the UK. But that's a separate topic for a different video. Point is, it's fair game to look back and reflect on what you previously thought as new information becomes available. In fact, that is very much a humanist principle. Back then, I didn't realise how much money Humanists UK was raking in. As anyone can read in my email volunteering, quote, "First of all, I need to be clear that I understand the charity status of the BHA and thus know that this is a commitment without pay in most likelihood." End quote. Aliyah's article dismantled that notion entirely. It also pointed to this being a pattern of behaviour, and a pattern only becomes stronger as more data points are added. That's why I felt compelled to share my own experience with Andrew, because whilst it may not be as tragic as what has happened with Faith to Faithless, the Gay and Lesbian Humanist Association, Defence Humanist and the UK Centre for Inquiry, it does offer some insight into how Andrew perceives his fellow humanists. Not as people, but as a resource to be extracted. But what do you all think? Do you believe that Humanists UK is a force for good in society? Do you think it's just become another supposed charity that seeks to line the pockets of certain members? Is there a way the situation could be resolved? Did you notice something that I missed? If so, be sure to let me know in the comments below. Just know that abuse won't make it through. Do be sure to check out Aliyah's article on the topic, though word of warning, do be careful if you're trans and you follow her. Many ex-Muslim circles have an unchecked transphobia problem, which surpasses that seen in even the main secular community here on YouTube, something both myself and Adita started to notice around 2017 and onward. To be absolutely clear, I haven't seen Aliyah posting any such materials. In fact, the only time I've seen her speak on the matter is in support of trans people, though she has retweeted content by others who have gained infamy for presenting trans women as invasive and violent monsters, so just be aware of the sort of person that might pop up into your feed were you to follow her. Your safety comes first. Now, if you like what we do here, please consider becoming one of our wonderful patrons who make all this possible. On that note, we'd just like to thank the following people: Matthew Kovac, Hannah Banghart, Gerrit van Voorst, Roy and Katie, Cthulhu, and Sosh Daniels. And for myself, Adita and Levi, take care now.